Welcome back, guys, to the weekly recap show. This time,
Nice transition.
I just, sometimes you just have to make sure that everyone's in their right little screens.
Like to point out the intro is going amazing.
It's amazing. Caleb. Shut up, Jacob. Every week, man. Every week. This week we've got Jacob, our DM. We've got Corey, who plays Lochnar. And we've got Zach, who's our head moderator. So, this week we're going to be going over 3 episodes again like we did last week. If you guys haven't checked out last week, you can go back and check that out on YouTube. This week we're going over episode 18, 19, and 20, which are up on YouTube now, and 2 of them are pretty short and there's not much to explain about them, but that's why we're grouping them in 3s right now and not in 2s. And we have almost caught up to where we are in the campaign as well, so the more that we spoil things, me and Jacob mostly, the more that we're not actually spoiling too much because we're getting closer. So the way this is going to work is basically I'm going to go over what has happened in episodes 18, 19, and 20, and then we're going to get into a couple conversations for the group, and then a little bit more conversation with Corey for his character about specifics that has happened in these couple episodes. And yeah, let's just go ahead and get into this. So in episode 18, we had Corey. Actually, let me explain this first. In episode 18, we lost our original episode 18. We don't know how. I had it downloading or downloaded,
Caleb's fault.
And it's gone. It's just gone now.
Caleb's fault.
It is my fault.
Definitely.
But basically what happened in episode 18 is I do have an intro explaining what we did. It was very boring. That episode that we lost was honestly just traveling from where we were with where we had saved the town from Knowles to Amman, and then kind of shopping a little bit in Amman before going over to a tavern and finding Lochnar in the tavern, and he had been signed up to fight in a place called the Pit. And that is where episode 18 starts off. We are at the Pit. Me and Zygon had put down money against Lochnar, all in the spirit of fun though. And then the other guys had put some bets in for Lochnar to win. Lochnar did end up winning the first fight against I think it was like Genasi.
2 rounds, and then I killed him.
Yeah, it was a good fight, but Lochnar definitely was the winner on that one. Everyone in our party won a little bit of money back, other than me and Zygon. But the big part came in when they announced that the champion was coming in to fight, and the champion was a what are they called, Jacob? What's that?
Warforged.
Warforged. The champion was a Warforged, which is a basically, if you guys don't know D&D very well, it's like a robot kind of. It's a robot with a soul. It's a metal built.
Yeah. They were created, I believe, for 4th edition. Yes. Which is the edition before we're playing, and they are from. They were created in a different plane and then brought to the Prime Material plane.
Yes. So that's what Lochnar ended up fighting in that episode, or in that fight. And it was a tough one. It was tough to be kind of watching. I once again put money against Lochnar, again in the spirit of fun. Same with Zygon. But that one was a tough one to watch because there's a lot going on. Being able to not really see Lochnar succeed as much as he usually does. And it actually was the first time our party has really witnessed losing in a sense of actually fully losing. We've had very few scenarios throughout our campaign where we went down as hard as in this situation for Lochnar alone, because we weren't all fighting as a group. But this one was our only true loss that we've had, obviously, because we haven't lost anyone yet. So he did end up losing against the Warforge, and what was his name, Corey?
His name is Ferrum.
And we don't know what he said. He said something under his breath as he walked away, and it kind of left Lochnar demoralized. We ended up reviving him. Me and Zygon won some money back. I split my money that I won throughout the group because I felt a little bit bad for betting against Lochnar after watching the situation play out. And then Lochnar kind of just went on a walk, and we all headed up to Amman, where We stayed at Mathis's house, who is still a character in our campaign that is very prevalent. And yeah, so we let Lochnar walk out on his own. He was out all night. My character, though, so another major thing happened for me. Of course, a couple episodes ago, the Baylor had taken me and gave me a deal that we made so that we wouldn't get killed by him. And he basically gave me a list of people I have to take their souls from. And the first name on my arm was Tabitha Fredericks. And in this episode, we met Tabitha for the first time. It is Mathis's assistant in the house that we're staying in. Nothing happened in this episode, so that had to do with that. But I did get to meet her for the first time, which was a little worrisome for me as a player and a character. Jacob loves throwing that stuff to me because he loves my reactions when things like that happen.
Oh, it's just so fun.
So moving on from that, we had another very dramatic episode in episode 19. Another one of those ones that are really fun to watch. And basically, what happened at 19 were the group split up into 3 different groups of 2 to go carry out a couple jobs that Mathis had put us out on. The first group was me and Zygon. We needed to go get information on Grinsbale, who is someone in the council, the city council. He's the master of war in the city council, so he's in charge of anything to do with war. Then Lochnar and Braun had to go and escort a prisoner, and Thea and Anzu had to go get some information and talk to, who was it, Jacob? The Spencers?
Yeah, and if I look at my notes here, Matilda Swade also, Grinsbale's lieutenant.
Okay, so they had to go talk to them for some information. So me and Zygon went off. We went to go talk to our person that we need to talk to. Big thing happened for Zygon in this episode, which we will talk to Brady about in the future because he has more big stuff coming up in more episodes. He met his wife for the first time since he's lost his memory, so me and him walked into a room and it got really dramatic. It was a very emotional scene for everyone involved. But basically, yeah, Zygon met his wife for the first time in a couple years of losing his memory. And we had a conversation with her, he and her had a conversation. I walked out of the room, but then we also got the information we needed from her and moved on from there. Again, we'll get back to with Brady on that later. The second thing, we had Anzu and Thea get some information. What's the most important information they needed to get right there? I forget that part. Jacob.
I want to see if other people... they needed to know troop movements and stuff like that.
Yes, okay. So Matilda Swade being the assistant to Grinsbale. I believe Anzu got her a little bit tipsy and took her for a little walk and got some information out of her in that. And then Lochnar and Braun escorting a prisoner did not go too well because when they got to the tavern they were supposed to meet up at, they got surrounded by troops, and then one of the people inside the tavern, who was one of the bad guys who were trying to break the prisoner out, blew up the tavern, and yeah, that is why that episode is called I think it's an explosion and a reunion, or the other way around. I just named it, can't remember it. I have the worst memory. But that was another dramatic episode. Then we all met up in a bar and kind of just chilled out and talked to each other about what we found out. That was a pretty cool episode to be part of. And then we move into episode 20, which is literally just us shopping for Guildhall. We decided to use the 50,000 gold that Mathis had given us. The 50,000 gold was given to us to use in any way that we thought would help us in our jobs that we needed to be doing in Amman. So we decided Guildhall was the best way to spend it. Also, it gives Anzu a good place to start actually founding the guild, the Flagon Slayers, which is what he wants to kind of start. So Braun and him go into this place to start the business up. They both co-sign for the building and all that fun legal stuff. And then we go shop, and there's 3 mini maps throughout the episode of 3 different buildings we look through. One's an old tavern, one's a manor out in the countrysides of Amman, and then one is an old guild hall, which we ended up picking the old guild hall because it was already set up to the place we needed it to be. And yeah, that's what happened throughout those episodes. And then yeah, basically now we own a guild hall, and we've got a lot of emotional things that happened in the episode before. So Zach, do you want to go ahead and get into a couple of the questions that you have?
Yeah. Where do I want to start? We'll start with Jacob. So in the pit fight, the champion uses a key point with his Fury of Blows. Could you kind of explain what the key points mechanic is?
Yes. So Farum is a monk, and monks as a class have a special resource essentially called Ki. It's like their form of magic, and it allows them to kind of manipulate the energy that flows through not only themselves but also others. So it's kind of like if there's fans of Naruto, I think of it kind of like chakra. It's very similar. Like there's a network of key points through your body that ki flows through, and monks have just learned how to access it or to hinder it in others. So the Flurry of Blows allows them to hit more times, and it's because they're accessing their ki and they're using their life energy in a more productive way than, say, a barbarian just punching people. Just an example, Corey. Don't take offense.
Cool, thank you.
I'm still gonna take offense.
Monks are a fun class. Another little insight on monks, if you want to. It hasn't come out yet, but there's a one-shot that will be coming out shortly. I did, where Abby played a monk, and Zach and Hunter both played paladins, and I have never run or been in a campaign with monks or paladins because for some reason people don't play them very much, even though they're both very, very OP characters.
I think it's because they're not flashy.
They're not flashy. Monks can be made flashy. A lot of you guys who might watch this have heard of Critical Role, seen Critical Role, and of course one of the main characters in season 2 right now is playing a monk, so she's kind of made that a bigger thing. Paladins, though, people don't like playing them because they have to stick to a law, and you cannot. It's hard to roleplay a paladin. So
I am going to say that paladins are the worst class in D&D 5th edition. Paladins or rangers.
Yeah,
because
rangers.
Paladins do not get enough healing to be a healer on their team, and they don't get strong enough to be the fighter on their team.
Yeah,
they're kind of stuck in this weird spot. And then rangers are just awful if you're just using the base game because their subclasses are terrible.
Rangers, you have to look at some of the newer Unearthed Arcana that has come out for them and some of the homebrews that you can find if you ever want to play a ranger, or else you're going to have a horrible time playing them. No offense to anybody out there who likes rangers. I am trying to also
I'm trying to defend you.
I'm trying to defend people who like the ranger class. They should have made it better. It's just plain and simple.
Yeah.
Paladins are always going to be hard.
Acknowledged it.
Yeah, paladins are always going to be a hard
one
because they have to. They're a lawful good unless there's a couple things that will change that, but they're always lawful.
They can be
good.
Lawful evil too. It depends on their oath.
Yeah, and basically they have to stick to that oath. So it's really hard to play paladin mostly when it comes to role playing, even though their mechanics aren't the best. But they are usable, and you can be a good paladin, and you can get a long way as a paladin. But you need a good team to back you up. So
if you're in a campaign where you're fighting a lot of undead, paladins are great. Other than that, I think they're useless.
Which there are a couple campaigns. There's a couple.
Other classes do much better with better stuff. It's just that's my soapbox, and I'll get off of it now. But
all right.
Don't play paladins unless you need a reason to.
Yeah. All right, Zach, go ahead.
Next question for the group this time. So in episode 19, there's a lot of like jumping around between the characters and the stories. Is it kind of tough to kind of keep track of where everybody is and where you're at kind of during all the kerfuffle that's going on?
I'll let you guys answer that first.
I think the only thing I could see in, like, So if you split the group in half, it's a different story. So we actually had that in a more recent episode, which you guys will see a lot sooner than some of the other episodes, because that one's coming up in the next couple weeks on the weekly recap. But we basically split the group in half. It's a lot easier to do that because you have one group who's sitting there waiting maybe for like 30 to 45 minutes at the max for like their now time for Jake to jump in and get to their side of the story. If you split the group in thirds, you know you're going to get a maximum or like a maximum time of maybe a third of that episode. So you know you're playing for like an hour that episode and then you've got 2 hours to kind of just sit there and listen. Which we all should be interested in the story at this point. We've actually had conversations about how our story's getting to a point where it's a lot more interesting to sit down and actually like watch the role play. I think we've all gotten to a much better point where we're able to actually make it more interesting for viewers and ourselves when it comes to points where it's like very like basic, just talking and maybe like splitting the group up like we did. But I can definitely, like, I think Corey can say the same thing. Sitting there and just listening for more than an hour is sometimes a little bit hard.
Yeah.
So
it's not painful. I mean, I don't really mind that much. I think it would be better. I think I would enjoy it more if we were all in person, and for obvious reasons we can't really do that anymore. I do miss that part, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah. It's you know, it's a little annoying, but that's the worst it ever is, because the story is getting much more interesting for each individual character, especially like in these episodes here. I think had a lot of fun, interesting twists and turns, and I do sit back a lot, but then I get my chance to shine, so it evens out, and it's not.
We also haven't had too much fighting going on yet. We will get back into that, I believe, soon. But
yeah.
Oh yeah, it's gonna happen next week.
I think as soon as
a dragon.
Oh man, as soon as Anzu's story arc, which was a very interesting story arc, but the only thing is that it only had to do with Anzu. As soon as that ended, and then we jumped up to a little like 2 weeks of my story arc, which after that ended, we came to Amon. And now in Amon, we all have story arcs going. Like, it's all of us. I don't think there's a single one of us that doesn't have something going on in Amon, because... So that really brought us all into a point where we're excited about our story arc, and then we're also interested in other people's and how they're playing out, because all of our story arcs are, like, together, so... It's really fun to watch. Jacob, go ahead and answer your part of that as a DM.
So, splitting the party. I do it for story reasons more than I do it for anything else, because one, I kind of like seeing what different pairings will do for the group and how they'll interact. So like Lochnar with Braun was an interesting pairing for me because their personalities are very different. So I just think it's kind of fun for them to kind of go off each other. I want to reduce the amount of party splitting, partially because I don't want, like, we wait a week to play. I don't want you guys to be sitting there for 2 hours and only playing for an hour. Like, I don't want that. So, I will only split the party when I believe the story needs it, but I won't just be like, oh, you guys are in the middle of a house. The house splits in half. What are you going to do? You know, like, I don't want to do that. So anytime the party splits, it's for story reason. And sometimes the party itself will try and split itself.
Yeah.
So
I think
when that happens, you just kind of go with it.
I think it's fine. Like, for every reason you've split the party so far, it's made sense. And it is like it's fun to be part of, like, when you're in your, like, hour, as I said earlier, when you're in your section of a story split, when it's focused on you and one other person, it's almost more interesting than being with all 6 people and, like, you're all just kind of, like, having talks. Sometimes it can be flipped where it's like it's more fun to be with all of them, but like with me and Zygon, like, our characters have a very similar storyline, and it's even more similar now as I keep moving on into whatever is happening to my character. So that kind of stuff definitely can be fun to play, but yeah.
Awesome. Great transition.
You're welcome.
10 out of 10.
Moving into the next question. There you go, Zach.
Thank you. So, Corey, a couple questions for you this time around. So the fight against Ferrum, good fight. It was actually a really entertaining fight to kind of pay attention to. So like during the fight, were you kind of expecting to win?
Well, in general, I was not expecting this to come out of anywhere because I didn't even know this was like a race. Like I had no idea what to expect. I did not do my homework beforehand, and Jacob gave me no idea what was going to happen. So I was caught off guard, which made it a lot more fun for me. I did expect to win, and that's why I bet basically all of my money on myself, which kind of ended up biting me in the ass. Because now, I'm not broke, but, you know...
I gave you some of the winnings that I had.
Yeah, you gave me some, so I'm not completely broke. But still, I'm down a fair amount. I lost all my winnings that I won from my first fight, and I made a good amount off that fight. So, like, I completely expected to win. I thought he was going to be a really tough, fight for me because, to be honest, Lochnar hasn't lost in a very long time. Like, even before, like, when I started my character, it had been a long time since he had lost a fight. I'm going to guess something like 10 or 15 years since he's last lost a fight. That's what his character is. And so this really rocked him, and it rocked me too, because I personally, since I started playing D&D, haven't lost a fight. I've come close, but I've never truly lost one. And it was both a shock to me and to Lochnar himself when I ended up losing, because that's part of the reason why I just kind of went away and sat by myself, because like I myself needed time to process everything that had just gone on. I needed to figure out like what was next for my character, because this was a major moment for him.
Gotcha. So kind of what were your feelings about fighting without weapons? Because I know that's kind of a big thing about Lochnar as well. Do you think it kind of would have gone differently? Do you think it would have gone differently with weapons?
Possibly. I actually really welcomed it because, I mean, it just felt more raw, and because Lochnar, he loves his weapons, but I don't think he necessarily uses them as a crutch. He, he can fight without them. I mean, as you saw, he did pretty well on his own, even without Flamnar and Giant's Bane and all those fun toys he has at his disposal. It was different. It was for sure different, but I really enjoyed fighting without weapons. And honestly, I'd love the chance to do it again sometime. Wink, wink.
Hey Jacob, that's for you.
Oh, don't worry. Like, the search for Ferrum is going to be a very fun side story that you guys will get to do probably pretty soon. So
yeah, like that's been in the back of Lochnar's mind since this.
Amon just has a lot to offer.
He needs to find them
now. So
yeah, I mean, so like, Amon is just huge.
Yeah,
and like, eventually you guys, I think you guys will be out of there probably by the end of the month, probably for at least a little while.
Yeah.
Well, so like me personally, I like being in Amon. I like all it has to offer, but I gotta think from Lochnar's perspective, and Lochnar's just, his head's not in Amon. His head is looking for Ferrum, and he's kind of annoyed.
Yeah.
And, plus, he's not like, Lochnar is not big on like cities and civilization, and like he prefers dive bars in these little podunk towns and stuff like that.
He's a man of the people.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good way to spin it. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we do have the end of our season 1 for this campaign coming up, which will give us some sort of finale that Jacob is getting ready for, before starting season 2, which will start off with a recap over all of what happened in season 1. And then just kind of start maybe outside Amon at that point. We'll probably have our finale in Amon and then move outside Amon. onto whoever's storyline is next for season 2. Also, a little quick jump to Warforged for you guys who do play D&D. If it's not out for you already, because this could be something you're watching in the future, Warforged are basically a thing that was added to Eberron. I have the book right here. Eberron Rising from the Last War.
It's like their newest book.
It's one of their newer books, yeah, and it's a book that basically takes place kind of in a more futuristic realm of D&D, but the newest book that's coming out this year is called Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, which is a weird name for it because we already have a Xanathar's Guide to Everything, so... But that's...
Yeah, but it's a cauldron because she's a witch and she has
No,
spells.
I know, but I don't know why they added the to everything on it or the of everything. Anyway, that one will actually be having some information on Warforged that are not just in Eberron. It's going to be more for like D&D as of all the other books. So
I honestly
bring it back.
think we should do a stream about that book too, because it's changing a lot of the rules for 5th edition. Like, yeah, I've been seeing on a lot of forums, people are calling it 5.5 essentially.
Yeah, we're gonna need to probably, me and Jacob will go over it for sure. Maybe Michael also, and then probably do a stream about that in the future.
We may or may not implement some of it. But yeah, it's interesting. I like a lot of the changes they're making. We'll see. I think it's 5.5. Like, I think it's a new edition starting with that book.
Yeah. All right, Zach. What else do you have for us?
An ad, by the way. This episode is brought to you by Loot Crate.
That business went under, man. I can't believe that. Anyway,
really? Loot Crate.
Yeah.
Stop. We can't talk about this right now.
Of course, it went under.
Interesting.
Zach, do you have anything else for us?
Yeah, I just have a question for you, Caleb, about the guild hall layouts. And how you came up with those.
Yeah, so basically I talked to Jacob because I know that we were looking to get a guild hall, and the group had already pre-decided that we wanted to spend that $50,000 off camera on a guild hall. It ended up being a conversation we had on camera as well. So yeah, I started like looking into mini maps. I've actually looked into a lot of mini maps before. I've built terrain, like physical terrain for our in-person like tabletop games before.
That's so much.
Yeah, and I was getting into that, and then when we jumped online, I have all this terrain sitting in my closet now that I'm never going to use unless I start seeing people in person again. But I've seen a lot of mini maps before. I've made a couple before, and so I started kind of looking at different websites that had self-generated, like, so they would random generate a building, and so I'd put in some dimensions, throw like manor or tavern, something like that on there. And then I also looked up a lot of stuff on on Google of people's creations of their own. And then I jumped into Photoshop and just created a couple setups, one being a tavern, one's a manor, and one is a guild hall, which is actually an abandoned Rangers guild hall. That's what it is.
Yeah, the Slayer's Take ran them out.
Yep, the Slayer's Take right across the place from us, or right across the street from us. We ran them out. Fuck me.
You got it.
Words, man.
No, thank you.
Words are hard, sir. Man. Words are hard.
Yeah, but basically it came from just knowing minimaps and looking at some other inspiration for it, and then putting in some work to build each map. So
cool. That's all I got.
All right. Well, I don't think there's too much else to talk about. We'll get Brady on next week. I think the only major other thing that happened was for me, which was with Tabitha Fredericks. That's also just going to come in the future. We're catching up to that storyline as well. Basically, the only thing you need to know is that Animus is always a little bit anxious when he gets around her. Just a tiny bit. So thank you guys so much for watching. We will have another recap coming out next week, it might be 2 episodes, but it might be 3 again. We are catching up really quick now. We only have 2 or 3 more recap episode weeks to be able to catch up to where we are in the campaign. and then that means that we can finish season 1 out and start season 2, which is going to be basically just new layouts on the channel in a couple ways, getting everything just to a better place, more smooth. And so thanks guys for watching. Go ahead and check us out on Sunday nights. That's when our campaign is. Around 6:15 is when we usually start. And check us out next week for the next recap. And then also look for our one-shots coming out soon, and for our end of season 1 and transition to season 2, which will have a full season 1 recap. Thanks guys for watching. We'll see you guys next time.
Thanks y'all. Bye.